Good afternoon. I'm back. I've been working on this thing for quite some time and I never could find a good place to just stop and show you where I was at the time because it seems to continue to evolve. I've left the lights off that LED light table there. I can turn them on. They're real bright. I'm not too worried about what it looks like there with the light or without it. I think I've got it going. Anyway, that's where I am on those three sections right there. And it's a little softer to look at them here. I can change the lights on this one here more easier. But anyway, that tells me where I am right now. And that's a lot of work to get to that point right there. And I'm working, finishing up this area right here. That's what I've been doing most of yesterday and today, all right in here. And I'm getting ready to put these two here in, and these are colored here because they've already been put in. Here I've just bordered them because I had them cut, but I didn't have them fit or ground down and cleaned up enough to put onto the box here. So here I've just left it kind of uncolored till I get it done, and I kind of stopped right in the middle of it. I thought I'd show you how that's done and then where it came from. That particular area right there, I was looking for a kind of a lavenderish, mix a little white in there, right in here, kind of lighter colored right here. As I'm gonna transition down here a little bit darker on into some blues and maybe a little purple, whatever I decide to do down here. I've got some ideas on a light table over there. I'm trying to figure that out and meld this into something that really looks beautiful. And so I'm going to go ahead and finish 337 and 336, and they're all cut and they're paired up because there's 5 repeats. The lamp repeats itself 5 times. Those two pieces set together on the form and on the lamp together. So I laid them out and cut them together and paired that combination up, and here's those pairs. And I cut this out with a ring saw because when you're trying to dissect little small pieces out of a certain area for a certain color, then the ring saw is about, well, you can do this with a glass cutter, but you have to start cutting this sheet in long sections, maybe short sections, and then you run out of the color you're looking for. And then to get it to move from that section over to the next section, you kind of get lost if there's 3 or 4 or 5 pieces here. So I just keep this in one larger piece to work off of, and I've got there's another sheet of it laying on that light table there. So there's no shortage of this. This is old glass. It's nearly 30 years old. Is that right? 34 years old. So there won't be any more of this. So that's an interesting thing I'm doing with this particular piece, is nobody's going to come behind me and get this particular glass. Anyway, so if we're trying to get into a certain area for a certain color, like I may want, in fact, I did that earlier on another piece, I may want half of that petal to have this lavender in it, and the other half of the petal is this lighter color. So I'd put my pattern on the area right there where I can split it and move it where I want it. Well, I draw around it, and then I scribe it with this diamond pen. Then I put a little bit of just Sharpie juice, ink on it, and then that leaves an indelible line on there that the water won't bother. And I come over to the ring saw and cut those out. And what the end result of that is, I'll get down here on one of these. Can you see that? Yeah, you see that little dark line around there? Well, I've got to grind now to that line. I could probably have cut this piece, and in fact several pieces. If I'd have started this video an hour earlier, let's see, I hand cut that one and that one and that one. Those are pretty easy to do. These that have these hooks on them and stuff like that, if you're trying to get a particular piece of glass, and you can see where I've been doing that here and here, I'm looking for a particular color. Now there's a stencil off of one that I did not use, didn't like it. But anyway, I was looking for that. I was looking for that color, that blue, to run through that particular piece of glass way back many pieces ago. Anyway, so I'm working with this blue. And then I got the form in. The form came in. So this will give you an idea of the massive size of this thing. This is made out of fiberglass. And then they have a little imprint of the cartoon or the design kind of etched a little bit into this finish that's on this fiberglass mold. And then you take tile grout and moisten the tile grout and go over this thing and get it into those lines. And then I can see where I am now when, I guess we could take a piece. See this piece right there. We'll see if we can spot that up here somewhere. Let me look at it again. There it is. There's 3 of them. There they are, right there. Okay, those pieces here, that one we in particular looked at, would go on the mold at that spot. So you can see what happens. And the way this mold works is that there's a wax that I heat up and paint on this mold. And that wax is sticky, and it'll stay sticky. So I come over here with that particular piece of glass. In fact, we'll do it right now. If we were going to, now all of this glass has got to get cut first before we start doing this stuff here. But anyway, we would come over here, glass is all cut, and I've fashioned this glass as close as I can to the pattern. Like anything, there's 2,000 pieces of glass here, so I'm going to have some that I do a really knockout job on and some close. And if it's beyond close, then I just got to throw it out and do it again. In fact, I seldom have to do one twice, but I had to earlier today. Something was wrong with one and it didn't work out. Anyway, let's take a look at this. And so if this was, where you can see, if this was sticky, then I would come over here and I would set that piece of glass on there, and of course it would stay. And then I'd want to look at it and its relationship with this vine here, or whatever they call those things, branch. Yeah, these branches, there's a relationship with that branch. So where are we? Are we close enough, not close enough? And if this piece works, then I would put foil around it, and then it'll go back onto the mold, stuck to it, and stay there until I get all of them on the mold, all 2,000 of them. And because they've got the copper wrapped around them, then we'll start the soldering process. There's a long way to go here. Anyway, areas that my grout didn't quite touch as much as I wanted, I touched up with a Sharpie. And let me put this back because I don't want to lose this. And then I'll show you what's what about this mold. So you can get an idea of the massive size of this thing. I'll show you the inside of the mold. Now, there's the inside of the mold. I need to fashion a round, I'm going to use probably 1/2-inch plywood, could use 3/4, a round disc that fits this thing very closely. And then I'll put 4 holes in the disc across from each other, and I'll put a screw in there and start to tighten this fiberglass outer shell up next to that disc. And this is where I can get this perimeter of this lamp exactly round. So that's what I'll be working on, that to get it X amount of inches across here, the same as here, the same as all around it, to make it nice and round. So anyway, then there'll be a fitting that goes on the bottom of that wooden plug here, and that goes into a stand that I have that will hold this lamp up while I move it around to do all the soldering on it. So anyway, it's a pretty good size lamp for sure. A lot bigger than what you might think when you're thinking or looking at the work I'm doing on video. Pretty good saw. There's the ring saw. I took the ring saw apart and had to rebuild it. There's a lot of, I would say, moving parts here, and it's hard. The water gets ground up glass in it and really eats up bearings and stuff. So, ever so many hours, you don't get a whole lot of hours, but every so many hours you got to take some of this stuff apart. There's some more of it inside of here you can't see. anyway, and rebuild this stuff, put new parts in, new belt, this, that, and another. Anyway, that's to keep that thing going. And there's some cuts here I'm telling you, you're just not going to do. I would prefer to do them by hand because it's much faster. However, stuff like that, 90-degree turns, nearly 90 degree. There's a 90 right there. 90-degree turn. I can cut everything on here by hand and probably maybe get, boy, that's really pressing it, but maybe get that out of there and still keep this intact. But how many times am I going to have to do that to get this one? And because you're using the ring saw, you can take that piece right out of the sheet where you want to take it out and not waste any. This glass is I can't replace it. So there's no more of this. There's another company that might make something close, but not this stuff. So anyway, you want to save as much of this as possible. See, and I've got a lot more work that can be done right in here as I go darker the further I get down. I've got some other stuff here, and I don't know that right now that's not, this part of this sheet right here is not working. There's another whole, the far piece over there is another sheet of this, so I'll have to see if that's going to work or not. And that's Uroboros glass from 1998. You can't get any more of that. Anyway, in the right place, I might be able to get this to work. I've got to just keep thinking about it. So there's some I've already worked with right there. Some pieces over here. So you got this up on my light table just to look around. If I need something a little bit lighter, there we are. But I paired these up. Oh yeah, I'm going to show you this here. So, man, this is harder than it looks. Now that piece of pattern right there doesn't look like any big deal. But boy, if you're going to make this lamp and going to make it, and it's going to be exceptional, then you're going to have to get these pattern pieces to fit these pieces of glass, because that's the way this thing's going to go together best. Now, the spaces and stuff going on right now on this thing here don't mean anything, because I traced this out pretty quick just to get the size of it. I mean, it's close, but not that close. But the real rubber meeting the road is when you take those pieces off this light table and you come over to here and start sticking them onto here. And that's where, if you've paid attention and worked real hard and tried to cut that glass to pattern, that's the key. Anybody that's been doing this for any length of time will tell you that the real trick to this stuff is cutting glass to pattern. Can you cut pieces of glass and make them fit a pattern? And the idea is the less messing around with the piece that you do possible. In other words, you want a real good cut around here with a little bit of grinding. You don't want to have to go to the grinder and shape up everything around here. Well, when you're using the ring saw, that's exactly what you have to do. So it slows the process down. Having said that, it doesn't matter how long the process takes if that length of time is the requirement for a very fine piece of work. So that's what I'm doing. Whatever length of time it takes to get this the way I think it should look is however long it takes. So I'm going to sign off here in a minute. I think I've covered what I need to cover. And then, oh, we could just go fit these two in if I can figure out where they go. Let's do that. All right. Anyway, there's the pattern for these two. And I've kept the pattern out because what I do with the pattern is I put it back up here. Put a little water behind it. Okay, there's 336. And there's 337. And then, see, now I've got my pair out of whack here. Well, maybe that's right. We'll figure it out. Anyway, I'll take these two pieces of glass right here, this pair, and they were cut from the same sheet right in the same spot because I want those colors to be right together. And I'll clean them up and make them. This one here is easy. But here now, this piece here is difficult because it's got some hooks in it. Look at the narrow bottom of that. Well, that's getting down to nitty gritty. So I've got to try to get around there and then keep working back and forth with the pattern to make it fit. Well, I probably bored you to death with that. Anyway, I can't think of anything else. Let's run over here and look at that. This glass right here. That's what we're working with right now, that lavender glass. This is some gorgeous glass. And I'm getting close over here, but there's a place for, I've got some of this in there now. There's a place for that. And I was trying to get to here with this being some of the purpley blue down in the bottom, but I'm not sure about that now. I'm going to sure have to lay smaller pieces of that out and see if this has gone off the deep. I don't know. I'm not so positive about that right there. But this is an LED light, so I'm going to change the lighting up when I get right down to do it. Can I use this? So anyway, that's what I'm doing. I'll be back in, I guess, a few days. I don't know. This moves like a glacier. I've said this before. A good day here is about 50 pieces. I'm not sure I hit 60. I might have hit 60 yesterday, but I don't think I'm going to hit 50 today because I'm down in the weeds here. And then this is these are all going to have to be fashioned on the ring saw here, everything. Because like this thing right here, you're not going to cut. If it didn't have this hard hook right here, you could get that one. But to cut this by hand with a glass cutter out of this sheet, you've got to make, say you want, I'm not sure everybody understands this. Say you want this piece of glass right here. Twice, okay, you want two of them. All right, if you take the ring saw, you just come in here and cut it out. It takes longer because you've got to draw it up like I have. And then, now this is just my method. I'm not saying my method is the best. I'm not saying anything. This is just how I do it. Other people, if you talk to 100 people that were going to build this lamp, they would do it 100 different ways, beyond different ways than I'm doing it. This is just what I'm doing. Anyway, then I scratch it around that thing with this pen, and then I rub some of this ink in there. And now I can't miss it. It doesn't get lost under the water over here, and I'm sure that it's there. So anyway, I would cut those two pieces out right there, and then I'd have those two based on that color, the way I want the color to run in the direction and all that stuff. Well, if you want to do that with a glass cutter, I could probably get real close on cutting this hook out of there. This I can cut with a glass cutter, no problem. But you're going to have to come across this sheet somewhere and cut that thing out of there. So I guess the least wasteful here would be to probably come just straight across, and then you'd have some of this colored glass left, and then you've got to come under it. So you've got it, I'm going to go this way. You've got this thing out of here, okay, take it out of there, and then you've still got to dissect it out of there. So pretty soon, rather than the ring saw just cutting in and out of here, you've got half a dozen different pieces just to get to these two. Well, what we normally do then is set up numerous pieces to try to take advantage of the fact that we don't have so much of this glass or X amount of it, or we don't want to use it. Look at these gold. This is MOTTLING modeling. Look at that, ring models. Look at that gold. Ooh, boy, that's got some potential, doesn't it? Anyway, this is gorgeous glass. And so anyway, the way to get this out of here, the least expensive and the way I can get the color exactly where I want it, is with the ring saw. Now when you do that, then everything slows down and this thing really gets to cranking. So anywhere I can use the conventional glass cutter, what I did with it, if this piece was in half or something, then I could come on the side of it and get this out of there. But because it's there, I put it in the middle because that's the color I want. Well, then, you know, we're going to be some sacrifices made. Probably, unless a person had to have that real dark, intense purple right there, they would take these two pieces here and move them to here and use that. But this is awful light, so, you know, that's what happens. But with a ring saw, you can come in here and dissect or get that out of there. All right. Anyway, that's my thinking on the issue. And I'll come back in a few days with more work. Well, I've got a ways to go, but I feel like I'm in a pretty good place. I've been doing it. February 1st was the first day I started cutting. So I'm not doing too bad. And I've, you know, got some other work done here set up. So we'll just keep plugging along here. I'm thinking there's, oh man, I'm sure there's 8 weeks of cutting left in this thing for sure. Oh, maybe more. It depends on, you know, man, some of this stuff's nuts, you know. Look at this down in here, you know. God, there's no, look at this thing here, that monster there. There's no conventional cutting here. That man, I'm just looking around for stuff that you would normally cut with a glass cutter, and there's some, but not any great number. And that leads me back to, man, these craftsmen that built these things, and they didn't have ring saws. Oh. Well, they were. My suspicion is that they were grossing or nipping a lot of the edges out, and then carborundum stones by hand and cleaning them up. I'm thinking somebody would know the answer to that, but the cutting skills are just off the charts to produce this kind of work here. It's crazy. Well, anyway, I'm enjoying going on the journey behind these girls. I've got an advantage to them in this better equipment, but I can assure you right now, there's no shortcut that I can see to getting quickly to the end of one of these. This, you just, as my art friend D. Carter Ray says, you just knuckle this one out. That's how this works. I don't really think about how much more is left to go. You just kind of get into an area and you start to try to enjoy. That's what I'm trying to do right now. I'm up in here. You start trying to enjoy what you can bring to that. In other words, I want to pick the colors out the way that they look good. And then behind that, you still got to come in here and jump through a lot of hoops to get these pieces the right shape and size. A lot of hoops. However, the end result's just going to be something really special, because who takes the time other than craftsmen that love to do this stuff? Who in the world would take the time and effort that it takes to do this if you didn't really love to do it? Well, you couldn't. Man, there's no amount of money that could motivate you to stand here for weeks on end if you didn't really love to do this. Well, anyway, I got to get out of here. Thank you all. If you have any questions, be sure and ask me. If I disappear for a few days, this thing, I didn't even want to do this today. I thought, and I'd promised the fellow that owns this lamp, I said, oh, I'll make a video later today, because I haven't been on here with it. And if I had commissioned this lamp, I'd kind of like know where we're at. So anyway, we're doing pretty good for an old man. I just stay on duty. All right. Reminds me of the submarine days. Man, I'm going to get off into the Cold War here, but during the Cold War, when you went to sea, sometimes you went to sea shorthanded. There weren't enough qualified people to do your job, the job you were supposed to be doing on there. So but there would always be two of you. Go figure. So anyway, two of us would take 60 days and divide it 50-50. I'm talking 60 24-hour days and divide it 50-50 and see who's standing at the end. Anyway, enough of that submarine stuff. I'll talk to you all later, and I'm just going to keep working. Thanks for your attention. I appreciate it. Bye.